Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn how Uber and Mad Canada are reducing impaired driving at uber.com/home soon.
CHEK Podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Political Capital, your source for all the latest in BC politics. I'm your host, Rob Shaw. Thank you for being here. I know I say it every week, but man, we got a lot to talk about. There is so much going on in BC politics. And before I bring in the pod squad, I do want to highlight just one new addition to the Political Capital family. Starting on Monday, May the 4th, we're going to be in your pod box daily, every day. I am going to have a brief 10, 15-minute, everything you need to know about BC politics. Wake up in the morning, you're walking the dog, you're on the treadmill, you're making coffee, bring you up to speed on BC politics. All you have to do is subscribe to the audio version of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and you will automatically receive this. So hoping that you join me for that. You also will get some guests every now and again popping in to say hello and explain BC politics. Okay, let's get to this show because we have a lot to cover. I'm going to bring in the pod squad. Jeff is away this week, so Mike McKinnon, director at Enterprise Canada, is filling in for us. Angelo Isidoro is here as usual. Jillian Oliver is here, and we're going to dive in to the beautiful game, soccer, or football. I'll probably get yelled at either way. Booted around the political pitch this week on two fronts. We're going to talk about that. The FIFA games are coming up in 40 some odd days. The World Cup matches in Vancouver. We have no idea what they're going to cost. And the Vancouver Whitecaps looking like they might be on the way out to Vegas. Lots of questions about whether the government should or can intervene there. What do the Whitecaps even want? Is that the role of the government because it owns BC Place to do something here? Let's start with you, Mike. There's two soccer issues here. Why don't you pick one and kick us off? I got a lot of these punts and get us going. Pick one, and then we'll go around on the other afterwards. The FIFA costs that we don't know, or the Whitecaps and what we don't know there as well.
Well, the whole Whitecap situation, it's kind of starting to feel like a set play. Like this is something that has been scripted and practiced, and I will leave out remaining soccer puns and leave them to you, Rob. But
Okay.
if the plan all along has been that the Whitecaps are going to leave Vancouver unless they can extort the city of Vancouver and the province of British Columbia, then come out and say it. It's been very frustrating to watch this from afar this week. Stop pretending that this is all about the fans and the supporters groups that had like a fantastic looking rally through downtown Vancouver on the way to the game last week. Both the MLS and the Whitecaps owners keep saying they're looking for local buyers. They've searched under every pillow and every corner bar in Vancouver, and they can't seem to find one. It doesn't seem like they're looking that hard because all of this has played out as if it is a script. Where unless they get exactly what they want from PAVCO, which is a crown corporation under the government of BC, unless they get exactly what they want, they're out of town and they're on their way to Vegas because there's somebody with $8 billion with some shekels in his pocket that he's willing to throw to buy a pro sports team. It's frustrating. I do think this is something that, this is political podcast. This is obviously encapsulating our politics here in BC. It is something that should unite us across the spectrum to find a way to keep the team in Vancouver. And I think credit to the Premier and Minister Callon for trying to find creative solutions. But to what end are they supposed to go?
Mm-hmm. That is the question, Angelo. Not really sure. The government owns BC Place. The Whitecaps want a better deal on BC Place. There's rumors or reports that they would like to manage it or maybe not quite take it over. I'm not sure why the province would give one privately owned sports team that, but maybe I don't know. That hasn't even really been explained whether we should go that route or not, but it's hard to sort of wrap my head around what the government's supposed to do here. What do you make of that uncertainty and what it means politically?
Well, it certainly does feel like we're about to lose our soccer team. That is what's happening. We know from the New York Times that a son of a Kentucky billionaire is interested in
Sounds like
buying
a
it, but
sounds like a swear word, son of a Kentucky billionaire. But yep, sorry, keep going.
it kind of does. But how did we end up here, right? I mean, I think there's a broader discussion that needs to be had around the fact that the government owns an arena, right? And is involved, whereas in other jurisdictions, you have arenas that are owned by private companies, or T-Mobile Arena or Rogers Arena or whatever it may be. We're in a situation where, frankly, a government that can't manage its own house owns a piece of property that relates to a soccer team. So they are interested, apparently, in taking over management of the arena, but it's not clear what that really even means, right? To me, it's like you're either going to buy the arena and buy the stadium, or it sounds like you're leaving. So I think there needs to be a broader conversation of should government actually be involved in managing and being involved in owning these stadiums, or should the free market step in? But beyond that, I think it is another interesting tidbit about the story is that Premier Eby does say he's fighting and doing everything he can. But then we have this executive from MLS who alleges his account was hacked, but he quote tweeted the premier saying, "Liar, liar, pants on fire."
Yeah,
So apparently that was a hack.
damn those
That's
hackers.
it's that's an interesting spin, but it doesn't seem like there's any love lost there between the Whitecaps and the government.
No, I mean, to be fair, I guess the Whitecaps and MLS have been complaining for years that the government isn't responding to their desire to make more money on the stadium, but it's not clear how that's supposed to work. Jillian, soccer politics, is there like we're trying to understand where the public is on this. Is there a risk that government takes it on the chin here if the Whitecaps lose by not stepping up and doing something that none of us can identify it should be doing and it hasn't actually even been asked to do?
Well, I mean, I think it is a huge or would be a huge loss for Vancouver. It's a city that's really struggled culturally. I think I'm born and raised there, so I feel like I can say that. And the recent success of the Whitecaps has been a real bright spot for a lot of people, and one of the few places in the city where I think there is like a real authentic community. And so I think that it's certainly going to be disappointing for people. Whether they lay blame on the provincial government, I mean, like talking about this in the hypothetical a week ago, I might have said yes, but I think that the league and the owners have been going out of their way to seem like they're the ones at fault here, maybe not intentionally. And the province, I think, does look like they're trying to do everything they can. What they've said is that the ownership and the league haven't come forward with a serious proposal, and there's no plan to address the debt in particular. Sure, they could sign over management of the stadium to the Whitecaps, but it raises questions about what happens to the Lions and all the other events that happen there, and also the debt. And it doesn't sound like they're willing to take that on. And I don't think it's fair to ask the government and taxpayers to keep holding the bag if they're not going to still have the asset. So it's sad, and but it also kind of looks like Mike said it might have been already kind of in the works, that this was a foregone conclusion, that the ownership was kind of just basically looking to cash out and get some American dollars for a team that has become really successful.
I mean, the ownership team bought the Whitecaps for like $34 million, and now it's worth almost $500 million. So that was the suggestion from government, is just a cash out move. There's really nothing the government can do here to salvage this, but people might blame the government in some way for not trying. I don't know. It is an interesting file that continues to develop. Actually, before we get to FIFA, I want to just take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about FIFA coming up just after this. All right, welcome back. We're just going to quickly talk about FIFA. It's only a month and a bit until the World Cup games in Vancouver. The government saying it cannot provide the security costs in any sort of form right now, but we know Ottawa has put $100 million towards that. So the question is, where's the bill? What is the bill? What is this all going to cost? Angela, let's start with you on FIFA. What do you make of where we are at on that cost issue in the games right now?
I think the provincial government is heavily underestimating just the significance of this event. I think it would be perhaps an overstatement to compare it to the Olympics, but not an understatement to say it is probably the most significant sporting event since the Olympics. And I think we see conservatives like Macklin McCall calling out the government for its lack of transparency on security costs. This is something where, we're going to see thousands and thousands of people from all over the world and all over British Columbia probably come out. And I think safety is a profound concern in this modern age. So the lack of transparency continues to be a significant worry for Conservatives in the province and for all British Columbians, I'm sure.
It is weird. I'm not sure why we just don't get, like, the question to the Solicitor General at one point this week was literally, what's the deal with the state secret here? Can't you just tell us this? And she was like, no. So that's odd. We don't need to go around totally on it, but anyone else want to jump in on FIFA?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I think that the Greens had a statement on this earlier last week, and Jeff kind of called them out for it. But I think it's looking like this might actually turn into a bigger deal than we thought. It was already pegged last year at $350 million, and now they won't release the final figure. So I think that tells us that the government's worried about it and that it's going to be significantly higher.
All I heard there was Jeff was wrong. That's what I heard. He's not here to defend himself, so that's spectacular. Okay, let's move on to another topic. We all have kids, and the question that has come up here in the last week is, should we ban kids from social media? Manitoba's premier last weekend said the province is moving towards that. The feds say they're thinking about it. Australia has done it. BC's Attorney General sent a letter to Ottawa this week saying, get moving on it. Mike, is this a good idea to ban social media for kids? Is the province pushing in the right direction here? And is there going to be any backlash at any point when parents realize maybe that means they can't put their kids in front of YouTube and watch, like, somebody operating a backhoe for an hour in a public works yard and call it kids entertainment? People don't want to ban YouTube, I don't think. But anyways, what do you think of all this?
The government side, I think it's a really good point about the parent impact, which I want to get to in a second. The government side, they've been really consistent on this, actually, even before the Tumbler Ridge shooting put a renewed spotlight on chatbots. And the Attorney General in particular, I remember a very good interview she had on another CHEK media show that she said at that time, and has for a while, that it makes far more sense for the federal government to take the lead on regulation and enforcement related to young people online. And the federal government has been talking a good game about this, saying, floating some trial balloons. They're saying they're working on it. There was a resolution at the Federal Liberal Convention a couple of weeks ago, but so far, nothing of substance yet. And I think that's why you have BC and Manitoba over the last week coming out and saying, essentially, if you don't do something, we will. Mm-hmm. The parent side of this, I think it's really interesting. There's some polling very recently by the Angus Reid Institute, shows really high support, like 75% for a ban on social media for, say, kids under 16, like Australia. Almost the exact same number of people say it should be the parents enforcing it, not government. So is this parents who want a law to fall back on when they say no more TikTok? Or is it they truly want to make the choice as to whether their kids should be using social media or chatbots at all? And so how any order of government, whether it's the feds or a group of provinces getting together, maybe decide to implement and enforce this is going to define whether it's successful or not.
Mm-hmm. Those polling numbers are super interesting, as you put it. Angelo, you've got a 1-year-old. You're starting to raise a kid in this world of social media. Where do you land on the idea of a ban, or whether that's government's role at all?
Well, I think we need to define what social media, right? Is YouTube actually social media, or is it a video viewing platform? We're talking about Facebook, which kids don't use anymore, Instagram, TikTok, and then are we also talking about AI like ChatGPT? What we've seen recently is a significant uptick in younger generations dealing with anxiety, depression, suicidality, bullying, and violence. And we saw that with Tumbler Ridge, but we're also in British Columbia. Let's take a step back for a minute and remember Amanda Todd and how she was bullied online. I think that, I come at this from an interesting perspective because my generation is sort of part of that last generation that could still remember life before the internet, and then every generation after us has grown up on the internet. I grew up on social media. I spent most of my career on social media, and I will absolutely never allow my daughter until she is of age to be on social media because it is objectively damaging. It's damaging in academia because of frankly the circumventing in education. And I know people think that there's a way to detect that, but they're getting around it. It's damaging in social interactions. It's damaging on a psychological level around what it does to your dopamine receptors, just consuming that level of content. And we've seen from especially the AI bots that it's highly problematic in some cases in damaging your mental health. Australia has banned it. There's been mixed results because, frankly, people can circumvent it. But Manitoba is doing, to your point, what we're now talking about, which is, hey, federal government, you should do something. If you don't, we will. So I think there needs to be a very serious discussion around what this actually does to us. And it's not the same, again, in my opinion, as traditional social media or older social media. It is advancing very quickly, and much of it is very predatory in what it does to your brain, especially brains that are still developing. So I think there needs to be a serious consideration of the long-term effects of this technology.
And it does feel like that's the kind of thing that all parties could cooperate on doing, like to agree to a baseline here that of what is bad and why is it bad. And then at least we know, at least we're all on the same page to start off with. But yeah, Jillian, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're so far behind on regulating these things. I do think that a ban for minors makes sense because it sends sort of like a very clear society-wide signal that this just like isn't safe for kids. But like Angela said, it's not a silver bullet because it's easy to get around, and there's a lot of questions being raised about Manitoba's ability to enforce it, and we're seeing lots of kids being able to get around it in Australia. So I think, it's a first step, but we need to be talking about how do we mitigate some of the harmful effects of these technologies going forward and help educate both parents and kids on what it's doing to their brain, how to use it responsibly when they're older, and also thinking about like what needs are kids trying to meet that's causing them to overuse things like chatbots, and where are we falling short in providing alternative sources for them to find fulfillment, find the answers they're looking for, find connection. I think it was last week, Angelo had his political play of the week talking about kids who had to fundraise for their own music program. And we're hearing about cuts to those kinds of programs across all kinds of school boards. And I think it's a reminder of all of the areas where we're falling short that's also sort of contributing to driving kids towards the overuse and abuse of these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I'm of the mind where it's tough for governments to keep on top of something like this. Everything moves so quickly. You got the face tubes and then the Googletron, you got the Grams chats and the snaps and whatever. Like it's just going to keep evolving. And unless you manage to come up with a regime that constantly is flexible enough to figure out the difference between a chatbot and then, Microsoft Copilot built into your Word product. And then it's just like it continues to, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for any government to keep their hands around an issue like this, even if they in good faith want to try. Anyways, let's take a quick break here. I want to come back and talk about the threat of a nurses' strike. We'll come back and talk about that after this. Welcome back. BC nurses holding a large rally in Vancouver, threatening a strike. There's a strike vote coming up for their 55,000 members within a week that could potentially disrupt the healthcare system. On the other hand, BC's doctors now have a tentative physician master agreement with the government that could be ratified in the next month. So good and bad on the health file for government here. Jillian, let's start with you on this. Nurses. Can the government allow the nurses to go on strike? There are some issues here involving benefits and all sorts of different things. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. All the times we talk about the healthcare system in crisis and the staffing shortage, can this government do anything other than just fold onto what the nurses want here to prevent a strike, I guess is my question.
I kind of think no. I mean, like they're the most essential worker. Because of that, the strikes will be limited, but they can still refuse to work overtime. I think there's about 7,000 vacancies in nursing right now. It's just huge. And like you said, the healthcare system is already sort of teetering on the edge, and we're already seeing headlines about ER closures, every other week. I think that it's probably looking like the government is just going to have to give in, and the things that they're asking for, the government is trying to cut their physio, their massage therapy, and everybody knows because of their personal interactions with the healthcare system. A lot of people know nurses personally, how much they really need those benefits because of how taxing of a profession it is. So I think you're right. I think it is heading towards an agreement that falls in favor of the nurses.
Capitulation, and for lack of another term. Mike, what do you think of this? Is that nurses just, are we actually going to have a strike here, or are they just going to get what they want?
Well, I want to push back on the idea here that any of this would be caving if the nurses do get what they want. Like absolutely, there is a lot of fiscal pressure on this government. Times are tight. Government's made a lot of difficult choices, and there is still a very large deficit. But if anyone is calling for nurses and other healthcare workers to not get the benefits they deserve, to not get a raise, to be paid less, I would encourage them to come out and say it, especially if they are sitting in the legislature.
Isn't that the government's position, though? It's the government that's got the offer on the table to cut their massage benefits. Like, that didn't come out of nowhere. But yeah,
and that's why we have collective bargaining. Is to figure those things out at the negotiating table. But like I would suggest that there's a lot of us, maybe some of us on this show, certainly those of you listening, if you're watching The Pit, for example, because it's an awesome show. So first of all, you should be. Put your hand up if you don't think Nurse Dana deserves a raise. I'm sorry, if you're putting your hand up, I think you're wrong. And they're the lifeblood of the healthcare system. They deserve a raise. They should get it.
Okay, Angelo, really quick, 30 seconds. What do you think?
Oh, this is after a decade of this government. It's the long-term effects of deficits, right? It's cuts to the healthcare system. We need to support our nurses. Nursing was not what it used to be even 10 years ago. There's a lot more violence in the healthcare system that we hear nurses talk about. There's open-air drug use. They need far more support than what they're getting. So they absolutely deserve their massage therapy, whatever they need. The government needs to give the nurses what they want. There's no harder job in this province.
All right. Great. Thanks to the panel for being here. We're out of time. Make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast of this show for extras, and we'll get you into our daily show starting on Monday. We'll talk to you then, and we'll see you next week with all the latest in BC politics here on Political Capital. Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn how Uber and Mad Canada are reducing impaired driving at uber.com/homesoon.